Hey y'all, it's Valerie here, and I have decided to participate in the Flower Hill Farm seed planting marathon where every day in March you plant a different seed. I'm going to try my best to plant a seed every single day. I do have a couple of other videos that are going to be going up, so on the days that those videos go up, I will include that day's planting with the next day's planting, if that makes sense. I'll still plant a seed on that day. The video just won't go up until probably the next day, and then that'll be 2 days worth of seeds. So for instance, if I have a video that's not part of this challenge that goes up on the 13th, then on the 14th, I'll have the 13th seed and the 14th seed, if that makes any sense. I hope I'm explaining that in a way that's not too confusing. Okay, before I get to today's seeds, I just want to show you, I've got more stuff out in my greenhouse that I brought out, and I just want to kind of give you a tour of the things that are out here. So these right here are my hot peppers, and I have some Zimbalo melons. These are sweet peppers that I potted up because they were reaching the top of the humidity dome, and I still have peppers in that aren't germinated yet. This is some ginger, and this one sprouted way before the others, but if you look, you can see I've got other little sprouts coming up. There's one there, there's one there. This one's partially uncovered. I've got one right here that's tiny and starting to grow. I have Lisianthus, I have carnations, I have Dusty Miller, I have leeks and shallots and onions. I have snapdragon. These are violas and pansies. This right here, you can barely see it coming up, is some twisted juncus grass. I have these flats of succulents that just fell off whenever I was working in the garden. I have stock. I have all these strawberries that we potted up together. More Lisianthus. Some more pansies and stock back there. These right here are some sweet peppers that will eventually need potted up. And down here, I have some more strawberries, some more snapdragons. These right here are all the snapdragons that we potted up together. Back there I have some more leeks, and right here is my tray of ranunculus that hasn't started to come up yet. I made some tags earlier for those carnations. I'm just doing one tag per flat. I'm not tagging like each individual cell. And also the Dusty Miller. So I'm going to go ahead and put the little labels I made onto the tags and get those put in there. My little label maker that I made is a huge time saver. It does take, a little while to type it out on your thing, on your app. But also, it takes much less time to type it out once than it would be to, like, individually hand label, say, 6 different carnations tags. So, type it in once, and then you can print out 6, or 20, or 100, how many ever you need. And also, the app has a function where you can save your tags. So, if I grow any of this stuff next year, then or if I lose a tag, I can just go find it in my app and reprint it. So it saves them all for me, which that's going to be real convenient next year and the years after when I plant tomatoes, because some of my tomatoes are repeat varieties, but I'm really thoroughly enjoying having the label maker. I'm going to put these where they go, and then we'll get started with those seeds for today. The seeds I am starting for today are dahlias. And I have this package that I bought, and this is the Black Forest Ruby. And I got this because I love that dark foliage. And I'm going to kind of intermix these in with my other seed dahlias, hoping that in subsequent years that some of my other dahlias take on this dark foliage. So the genetics intermix. And then I've got these packages. I don't know why it's in 2 packages. Well, actually I do, because I put them away at 2 separate times. But these are all the seeds I saved for 2025 off of my own plants. And I only saved the seeds off the ones I thought were the most interesting. And there's a bunch of seeds in each of these packages. There's no way I'm going to be able to plant them all, but what I am going to do is put them in this container here and kind of mix them up and randomly pull out the ones I want to plant. But the reason I'm doing that is so that way there's a better chance of me getting a good variety. But like I'm just going to kind of, you can see, mix these up. And then we're going to plant them. So let me set that aside. I'm going to get my trusty little label maker out and make tags for my dahlias. I should have already done this. It would have saved time. I think that's okay though. Let's turn it on. Then I go on the phone, connect the device. Hold on. Connect the device. And then I'm going to make a label. The first one I'm going to do is the Black Forest Ruby. And then we are going to print my label. And then let's see. Can you see that? And these are waterproof. I did look for waterproof labels. And whenever I first got these labels, I put one on a tag, and then I stuck the whole thing in a jar of water and left it for about 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, it was still attached. Like, I think that being in constant water for 2 weeks and still being attached, it'll last in our rain, or at least hopefully. Okay, so I've got those. And now I'm just going to make one for my seed dahlias. Well, 2. I'm going to make 2 labels because I'm going to do 2 trays. There you go. Now I'll just press the button, turn that off, turn my app off, and set that aside. Go ahead and tear those labels. I'm going to go ahead and stick them on my tags here. I don't have as many of the Black Forest Ruby dahlias as I do the other ones. I mean, there's still a decent amount of seeds, and I did trade some of these in my seed swap, so you get more than this in a package. But since there aren't as many, I'm going to just mass sow those in this. So my first step is to get soil in there. Some of this soil is a little bit more moist than the other parts, so I'm just going to water it, because I always like to start with pre-moistened soil. Okay, my soil is moistened. And honestly, I'm just going to put my tag in, and I'm going to sprinkle these. Well, I might try to space them a little more evenly than just sprinkling, since there's not a ton of them. It'll make them easier to separate later if I do it this way. If I start to lose patience, I'll probably just go ahead and sprinkle. But until then, I'm just going to lay them out. I'm just laying them on the top, because once I get done laying them out, I'm just going to sprinkle some soil on top instead of like punching a hole in the soil and doing it that way. I'm just going to lay them on top and then put soil over it, dust some soil over top of it. Should have counted how many of those there are. I think that there's at least 20 or 30 of those. Okay, now let's just Sprinkle some soil on top. Make sure they're all covered. Also, I pick out any chunks that I find. If I find any little chunks of bark or stick, pull those out. It's mostly not too big of an issue. Alright, and then I don't have any out here, but I've got domes that fit these. I think that instead of keeping these out in my greenhouse, I am going to take them back into my house and put them under my lights until they come up, because it just makes it easier to keep track of the water levels if I have them in my house than it is out here. It's just easier to check on multiple times a day, even if I need to. So there's the first one done. So I'm basically going to do the same thing for my seed dahlias, but I'm going to use these 10-20 trays, and I'm just going to fill this up with soil and sprinkle dahlias. Now on this one, I probably will just sprinkle them instead of going and doing them individually, because that's a lot of dahlia seeds. Got a big old bucket of soil beside me. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. I don't know if it's in frame or not. This just makes it easier to put soil in things, and also if any soil drops, it drops right back in the bucket where it can still be used instead of dropping on my floor. And that's got some different levels of moisture, so I'm going to go ahead and water it. This isn't the most convenient water to do this with. Might be a little bit too wet, so I just sprinkle a little bit of dry stuff on top, and then it'll absorb some of that water. There's no holes in these trays, so they won't drain out. Some of it needs to go to that side because that side's more dry. Alright, let's set this aside for now so I can fill the other tray. Nope, sorry, I bumped you. I'm going to fill the next tray. Once again, this is needing a little bit of water. Try not to put so much this time. These are, like I said, aren't the most convenient ways to water this. Okay. I think I need to get a little old hand towel out here to wipe off excess dirt when I'm doing this. I want to go ahead and put my tag in there. And then I have my little tray of dahlia seeds. I'm going to just give them a good mix. I'm literally just sprinkling these over the top. I'm not going to take the time to separate them out like I did with the other ones. I'm just spreading seeds. And at some point, either whenever I go to plant them or if I decide to pot up, we'll separate them into individual ones. But for now, I have a bunch of dahlia seeds. And there is a little bit of chaff in here. Just spread them a little. What I was saying is some of the stuff you see, there is a little bit of chaff in here. And chaff is just the parts of the plant that isn't separated out, that's around the seed, like any plant matter that's not part of the seed that ends up staying in, because some seeds it's really hard to get all the chaff. Other seeds it's a little easier. And also sometimes you just get lazy and get tired of separating chaff from seed. Okay, now I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of soil on top. Making sure I don't see any obvious places where I can see seeds through the dirt. I'm not putting a lot. Let's go ahead and kind of barely pat that down so it's making good contact. I'm not seeing any obvious places where seeds are sticking through. If so, I just go put a little bit extra. Alright, we're going to set that one aside for now. That one's done. So now, we're going to take the next tray and do the same thing. Just want to take my dahlia seeds and just sprinkle them. I hope I get some interesting, unique varieties of dahlias. Though, you know, I didn't think I was going to use them all, but I don't have very many seeds left in here, so I'm just going to put them all in here. Some of these won't germinate. A lot of them probably will, and they'll be really crowded, and honestly, it'll just be survival of the fittest. Whichever ones make it to the end will be the ones that get planted. All right, let's sprinkle on some soil. I'm really surprised that I ended up using all those. The reason I'm doing so many dahlias is because in the past I've planted them about 12 inches apart. Everything says, when you read about it, says to plant them 18 inches apart. But then I was watching this, it was a reel or a TikTok, I'm not really sure which one. And there's a guy, I want to say, he calls himself Mandrew, but don't quote me on that. Sometimes I get things mixed up in my head. He grows dahlias, and he said he puts his dahlias about 4 to 6 inches apart. And with that information in mind, I decided that I'm going to try that. And we're just going to see how many dahlias we can do. So I've already know where I'm putting these, and I've decided we're going to just stick them real close together and see what happens. Which means that I can plant a lot more in the same amount of space. Though I will have slightly more space than I grew them in last year. And I do have a few dahlias that I kept the tubers from, because these seeds will produce tubers in the first year. So if there's a variety that I really am partial to, I can just dig it up and have clones of it from the dahlia tubers that it provides. Alright, so did I get my tag in there? I don't see it. Did I cover my tag? Oh, there it is. Put it over there. Okay, so all I have left to do is to get these inside and get humidity domes over them. For me, this is the third. You will probably see this video later on this evening, but in accordance with the challenge, I did plant seeds on March 1st and March 2nd, even though I did not know about this challenge at the time. So I just want to show you that all these little containers here have calendulas in them. And then I have this little 4-pack right here of peppers I didn't get planted when I planted my other peppers, because I just got them in a seed swap. And I didn't have them at the time I planted. So I planted these. Well, there's another little 4-inch pot back there that also has peppers. So I planted those on the 1st, and I planted these calendulas on the 2nd. So this is day 3. I did dahlias on day 3, and honestly, this works out for me because this is the time of year where I would just happen to be planting a bunch of seeds anyways. And so I really like the idea of this challenge, and I hope that a lot of you out there will follow along and plant your own seed a day in March. And go watch the Flower Hill Farm video that I'm talking about. I will link that in the description if I'm able to. I think I can. I think you can do that. Anyways, I'll link it in the description. I would really be interested in knowing what you're planting. And also, don't forget to put your zone and or your last frost date, because honestly, zones mean very little when it comes to what time you plant out or how many days of planting you have. It's really based on your first and last frost date. So drop your zone and your last frost date if you have that information, and let me know what seed you're starting this time of year. Thank you guys for hanging out with me while I do this seed a day challenge for the whole month of March. And I really appreciate you when you hang out with me on these videos. It makes the process so much more enjoyable. I will see you next time. Bye. Muddy hands once again.